the face behind the chatty wallflower. Welcome to my channel. Here, my plan is to do a lot of knitting content with a mix of motherhood stuff. So if this sounds like something that you're into, definitely consider subscribing and hanging around for more videos. Today we are going to do a knit and chat episode and talk about unpopular knitting opinions. So grab your project, grab your beverage, and let's get started. Here in Michigan, we are having kind of a cold, crispy autumnal day, so I'm going with hot coffee. Also, my daughter has decided that she's now allergic to sleeping at night, which means I'm not getting any sleep, so I need all the caffeine that I can get. Right now, I'm working on Selma's sleep suit by Petite Knit. This is for my daughter, and it's going to be like a warm outerwear onesie. I'm almost more than halfway through, and I'm using a Camerose snowflake yarn in the color Snow White. Unpopular knitting opinions is by no way a new concept or one that I came up with. There's quite a bit of them on YouTube actually, and I really enjoy watching them. I think they're very spicy and they're fun to watch. My twist is that I'm giving you my own opinions and not asking anyone's unpopular opinion. So let's get to it. My first unpopular knitting opinion is that I actually enjoy purling. I know a lot of people don't like it and think that it's slowing them down, but for me, it's actually good. I need a second to slow down and look back at what I'm doing and check in with myself as I'm knitting. And it also breaks down the monotony of the pattern for me. So I don't know about you, but I really enjoy purling. If you are one of those people who don't like purling, let me know in the comments. Why don't you like it? Why don't you like purling? What has purling ever done to you? Okay, I'm back. I ran out of yarn and I had to start a new skein, but I'm back now. My next unpopular knitting opinion is that I actually quite like using DPNs or double pointed needles. I know, at least online, a lot of people really dislike using them, and I understand that they're dead sticks. They're two pointy ends and you have more than two needles working with at the same time, and they can be cumbersome, but to me it makes me feel really cool whenever I'm using DPNs and I feel like a proper professional knitter, which is not the case in reality. I learned on DPNs, and I like magic loop too, but I learned on DPNs, so I just automatically prefer using my double pointed needles. For me, they are easier to maneuver and work with, and because magic loop I learned it secondary to DPNs, I don't prefer it because I always get that kind of a weird gap in the middle of my work, where with DPNs I never have that gap. So yeah, DPNs for me are the way to go. My next opinion is that weaving the ends is actually not necessary a lot of times. Now, this depends on the type of garment or the type of project you're working on, the type of fabric you're using, and who is it for. For example, if you are knitting something for yourself and the yarn is not slippery and you can tie a pretty tight knot, you don't need to weave in your ends. Just do a couple of tight knots, shorten the fabric a little bit, and there you go. You don't need to weave in the ends. For me, sometimes just there's so many dang ends to weave in. There's about 1,000,000 of them, especially if you're changing colors, that it just stops me from finishing my project, to be honest. But if you can just tie a knot and get it over with, go for it. And they're going to be on the inside of your project anyways, so no one is gonna look at it, no one is gonna know it's yours. So my opinion, but I don't think you need to always weave in your ends. And on the topic of things that I don't think are necessary is a polarizing one, and that's that gauge swatching is not always necessary, in my opinion. Now, hear me out. I said not always. If you are testing a pattern for a designer, then yes, absolutely, you do need to do a gauge swatch. If you are knitting a tight garment, not a tight garment, a fitting, form fitting garment, then yes, you probably want to do a gauge swatch to make sure that it fits well. But if you are not doing any of those and you're knitting something casual, it's for yourself, and you know that whether you're a tight knitter or a loose knitter, you don't always need to do a gauge swatch. I know that there are kind of two schools of thought. One that thinks that you absolutely have to do gauge swatching is kind of basic of knitting, and if you don't do it, it's, hold on, I actually read this on Reddit. It's disgraceful if you don't do a gauge swatch, and some people cannot be bothered. I fall somewhere in the middle. Uh, if it's a form-fitting fabric, like I said, if it's a form-fitting garment, then yeah, I probably want to do a gauge swatch. But for the most part, I don't really care if my garment is a little bit tighter, a little bit looser, taller or shorter. To me, it's not that big of a deal. And I know that I'm a loose knitter, so I can adjust my gauge as I'm going and kind of adjust my expectations. And I've also pretty much never done a gauge swatch. I just look at the project, look at the fit, and kind of get it started. And so far, it's worked for me. I've never ran into a problem. Maybe I change my mind in the future, but for now, I don't think that you always have to do a gauge swatch. My next unpopular opinion is a little controversial, and it's that I don't enjoy using the Ravelry website for looking up patterns. This is not a shade towards the website or the website creators. Obviously, the website has been there for a long time and it's working for a lot of people, but for me specifically, I don't enjoy using it. Aesthetically, it's not pleasing to my eyes, and I have a really hard time organizing myself and finding patterns and reviews. To me, it's just not an easy website to navigate. If I'm looking up a pattern, I much rather just find a designer, go to their website or their Instagram, and support them there. I just think there are better ways to find a pattern than Ravelry. My next unpopular opinion is actually a concept that I have kind of an issue with, and that's the concept of selfish knitting. I don't think that's a thing. Selfish knitting, if you haven't heard of it, it refers to knitting garments, accessories, or whatever just for yourself. And I don't think that's selfish. There is nothing wrong with doing it. Knitting is a project of love. A lot of time and love and hard work goes into any knitting project. And if you want to do it for yourself and have something for yourself, then that's perfectly fine. It's not selfish. Doing something selfishly has a negative connotation. And knitting for yourself is not negative, it's a positive experience, both mentally in terms of meditation and relaxing, and you get a garment out of it. What is selfish about that? It's self love and self care. I think it's one of those words that just got popular, but really it just should be dropped from our vocabulary. Sorry. It's not selfish, that's just not a good word choice. I think it should be replaced with self-care knitting. And if you don't enjoy knitting for yourself, that's absolutely fine too. There's nothing wrong with that. I like knitting both for my family and friends and myself. And either way, it's not selfish. Regardless, it's a project of love. My next unpopular opinion is that just because a yarn is more expensive, it doesn't always mean that it's going to be a better quality for the project you're going to work on. Now, there are definitely times that you get what you pay for and the difference really shows in price. But there are also times that a yarn's price is higher because of the branding. Again, no tea, no shade towards any company, any yarn. I'm a yarn lover. I enjoy working with different kinds of yarn, expensive, not expensive. I just enjoy having them and touching them and looking at them. But you don't have to have a very expensive yarn to make a beautiful project. And I learned this the hard way by buying expensive yarn and realizing later that I could have made the same project with much cheaper. I think a lot of times you can get away with spending less money on a yarn and still making a beautiful project that has a high quality, and the price of the yarn shouldn't stop you from working on a project that you like. The best way, in my opinion, to find out yarn alternatives is to go to your local yarn store and ask them if they have any suggestion. My local yarn store has been a great tool to help me just understand yarn and educate me on different yarn types. Even if they don't have the yarns, they always help me with finding them and looking up resources. And if not, the online knitting community is huge and everyone is so positive, and you can definitely find alternatives for super expensive yarns if that's not in your budget at the time, or if you just don't want to spend a lot of money on your yarn. My next opinion, and that's one that I strongly believe in, is that if you're a beginner knitter, you do not need to start by knitting dishcloths or mug rugs or scarves. Let me say it again. You do not need to start knitting by making a scarf. Knit what you love, knit what makes you happy. It's just, to me, it's ridiculous to just knit a yard of scarf full of garter stitch or stockinette stitch just to say that you're learning. Now, if you like knitting scarves and mug rugs and dishcloth, do it. That's your choice. But don't feel like you have to do it because you're just learning to knit. Yes, it's a skill, and like any other skill, practice makes perfect. But the best way to learn is by making a project that's exciting to you, something that you love. It should be a project that you're looking forward to finishing and working on, and at the end of it you have something that you like and you're actually going to use. And you're not gonna learn if you're knitting something that doesn't excite you. And even worse, sometimes you might even just give up halfway through and never pick up your project. So again, knit what you love, not what you're told to. There's no knitting police, just do what you want to do. There are only a few rules in knitting that you have to kind of go by. My next unpopular knitting opinion is that I think that super chunky yarns are a little overrated. Over the past 2 years, I've been seeing a lot more super chunky yarn projects, especially garments on social media, and they look cool. Honestly, they do look cool, but there's a lot of hype about it. And the reason I think it's overrated is that yes, they are easier to use, they fly off your needle and are fast to work with, especially if you're a beginner, but they don't always look that great in reality. Depending on your body type, a super chunky cardigan or sweater doesn't always look all that nice on your body. I know for my specific body, they just make me look like a big box. So they look cool. I've definitely hopped on that train at some point and knitted something, and decided that, you know what, this just actually doesn't match my body and my style, and I much rather knit something in a finer yarn. Knitting a garment in super chunky yarn can be beautiful and can work, but it's just not for me. And I think they're overrated. It doesn't work for everyone. And to piggyback on that topic, I think just because a pattern is getting a lot of hype on Instagram or other social media platform and looks beautiful doesn't mean that it's going to be the right pattern for you. Again, this is not a dig at any specific designer, this is just a general comment. Sometimes you see when a pattern is released, it's getting a lot of hype on Instagram, and you see these pretty girls and influencers wearing them and making them, and the posts are so aesthetically pleasing that all you want to do is just have your hands on that project. But just because something is getting a lot of hype doesn't mean that it's gonna work for you. I realized that for me, sometimes I like looking at project pictures and patterns and just appreciate them as a work of art rather than wanting them as a piece of garment in my closet. And that took me some time to realize there's a difference between a pattern or a post looking very beautiful and artistic and that pattern working for you. And same as the chunky yarn, different patterns, different styles work for different people and look different on different body types and styles. For example, something with a lot of positive ease, I love looking at them and they're just beautiful. But for my taste and my body type at the moment, they don't necessarily always work. So I have to be kind of careful about realizing, am I liking this garment because it looks very beautiful and I just keep looking at it and I want to look like that, or it's all over Instagram and I'm getting conditioned to wanting it, or is it something that I actually want to have in my closet? And it's not just sweater or garment patterns, it can be accessories or home decor. Just because it's getting a lot of publicity doesn't mean that you need to have it. I think that it's important to step back, take a second, and check in with yourself before starting those projects to see, do you want this really in your life? Do you think this will be a useful item for you, or even something that you can gift? Or are you just buying it and making it for the sake of jumping on the hype train? And my last unpopular opinion is that mistakes in knitting as you're going through your project can make your project unique and even beautiful in their own way. Mistakes are how you learn, how we learn. And just because you made a mistake working on a pattern doesn't mean that you have to erase it and frog it. You can keep it, and a lot of times, I think 9 out of 10, they don't alter the look of the final project too much to make them unrecognizable or take away from their purpose. They just make them unique to you. That's your own twist, maybe unintentional twist, but that's your own unique twist on the project, and erasing them will just erase the memory of your knitting. I may be a little bit romantic here, but I think knitting is a project of love. There is a lot of hard work and love that goes into your knitting and memories that goes into your knitting, and mistakes are part of that. It's beautiful how you make a mistake, you learn from it, and you improve and get better. So frogging and getting rid of that mistakes to me is almost erasing the memory. So those were my unpopular knitting opinions. Let me know which one you agree or disagree with, and if you feel like it, put your own unpopular knitting opinion in the comments. I think it will be kind of spicy and fun to read everyone's opinion and their way of knitting. I hope you enjoyed this chatty video and made some progress in your work. I got a couple of rows done, so I'm pretty happy with myself. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, and I will see you in the next chatty video. Bye!